Hi, this is J.R. Martin. I'm the author of a recently published book entitled Selling Us Out. You can find out more about me in my book at sellingusout.org. Today I want to talk to you about an issue that's threatening our democracy, and that is the failure of the two-party system. Like many of you, this week I've been watching some of the Republican National Convention, and it's been interesting to see how the Republicans as a party, they have collective amnesia. They've forgotten the role that they've played in bringing us to the point that we're currently at as a nation. I'm sure we'll hear similar speeches next week from the Democratic Party, and they too, I'm sure, have got collective amnesia and are in denial for the role that their party has also played in bringing us to the point that where we're at. These parties are not serving the greater interest of the American people, and I think most of us realize that. But most of us are at a loss for what to do, and I'm going to talk about this right now in my video. But before I do that, I want to read to you a quote from George Washington, who, by the way, was an independent. George Washington, being the true American and true patriot that he was, I think probably the greatest American president that we've ever had, he refused to join in partisan politics, even though political parties were formed shortly after the Revolution and existed during his time. He absolutely refused to affiliate himself with any partisan group. And he looked at the partisan politics with great despair as being a threat to our democracy, as did John Adams. So let me start by reading a quote from both George Washington and John Adams, and then we can talk about this a little bit more. This is from George Washington's farewell address to the nation, and if you haven't ever read this, I encourage you to go online and Google George Washington's farewell address. It's a wonderful document, and this is an excerpt from that document. However, political parties may now and then answer popular ends. They are likely in the course of time and things to become potent engines by which cunning, ambitious, and unprincipled men will be enabled to subvert the power of the people and to usurp for themselves the reins of government, destroying afterward the very engines which have lifted them to unjust dominion. This is prophetic. This is exactly what we're seeing happening today, as most of us realize. And it's why Congress has a 10% or worse approval rating. Let me read a quote from John Adams. "There is nothing which I dread so much as a division of the Republic into two great parties, each arranged under its leader, and concerting measures in opposition to each other. This, in my humble apprehension, is to be dreaded as the greatest political evil under our Constitution." So George Washington and John Adams, both, one actually totally refused to affiliate with any party, and actually John Adams reluctantly affiliated with one of the parties of his time, but was never really a partisan person. Both had sacrificed, as the other founders did, their sacred honor, and in some cases their lives and their wealth, to bring about this democracy that most of us now take for granted. So now we've got a situation where we've been all told, mostly through these two major political parties, that we have no other choice. The only choice we have is to either vote for a Democratic or Republican candidate, and there's no choice. There's no other way. You just have to accept the candidates that these two parties lay before us. This is totally false. And actually, yesterday I had an interview with a gentleman named Jim Blasingame, which I encourage you to go on my website and listen to. It was a very spirited conversation. And actually, Jim and I agreed on probably most things. And after he reads through my book in its entirety, he'll see that probably we agree on probably the majority of things. There are some points I'm sure that we'll disagree on, but I think most things he and I would agree on. However, one thing that he said at the end of that interview that I didn't get a chance to fully address was that the only way we can affect change in this country is by working through the two-party system. I totally and categorically and absolutely reject that. That actually the reason our country is in the position that it now finds itself in is because of the blatant corruption and failure of the two-party system. For our country to recover from the situation that it's in, we must quickly and urgently with probably the greatest sense of urgency we've had since the American Revolution. We must move beyond a two-party system. And more importantly than any party system, we must create a system, a political system, where good, honorable, noble people can once again serve in our government without having a pressure applied to them by corrupt parties to do what's in the best interest of the party and not what's in the best interest of the country. This is the ultimate problem and failure with this system, is that this system has become more concerned about maintaining its power and collecting money from special interests and corporations and others that support it to send people to office to carry out their agenda and not the agenda that's for the greater good of America as a whole. These parties have become so beholden to those that are financing them and so focused on collecting money to make sure that they maintain their power that they've abandoned the glorious cause of America. What is the glorious cause of America? And I address this in my book. The glorious cause of America is liberty and freedom. How can a party that's put America on the path where 47% of our debt is now owned by foreign interests, the number one financer of the public debt being a communist nation, and both these parties are complicit in this, how can these parties say that they care about liberty more than they care about maintaining their own political power when they've put us as a nation in this position? So again, the Republicans this week, great speeches, at least for amongst themselves. They seem to be very pleased with themselves. And I'm sure we'll have the same thing from the Democrats next week, where they'll make great speeches and they'll feel good about themselves. Meanwhile, the country is in ruins economically and politically. And these parties, the responsibility for the position that we now find ourselves in as a nation rests at their feet. And they take absolutely no ownership of it. So how do we move beyond the situation we find ourselves in? Well, first, we've got to stop believing that we have no power other than to vote for these corrupt political parties. Now, again, not everybody in these parties is corrupt. There are good men and women, honorable men and women, and I could name a few, but I don't want to do that in this video. But there are many good public servants that are serving our country that go into office under the label of Democrat or Republican, because that's the only way, realistically, you can get elected into office right now because of the way the public perception is and the way the system's been rigged. However, even good men and women who are serving in our country under one label or the other, they're under tremendous pressure not to deviate from the party line, even if it means that their votes or their decisions will do harm to the nation, or their lack of action will do harm to the nation. The party puts tremendous pressure in both cases to make sure that they put the party above all else. It's the survival of the party. It's making sure that the party serves the interest of those that are funding them that comes before anything else. And those that don't comply are silenced or pushed out. This is why we find ourselves in the situation that we're in. So the question then is, how do you break this cycle? And how do we as Americans set up a new dynamic, a new political dynamic, where honorable men and women can be elected to office again? And speaking of that, let me just say this, that it's very likely, and actually I think I'm 100% certain based on the research I did on my book, that if George Washington and John Adams were alive today, neither of them, given the current situation that we have with the Democrats and Republicans and the dysfunctional and rigged systems that they have for nominating candidates to run for public office, neither George Washington or John Adams would be able to run and be elected to president. George Washington, because he would refuse to affiliate with any political party. John Adams, because he would refuse to compromise his principles in order to gain the nomination of any political party. And I'm sure the same can be true for many of the great leaders in American history. Actually, one great example is Theodore Roosevelt, and I won't go through all the details here, but I encourage those of you who aren't familiar with his story to go back and look up Theodore Roosevelt in his 1912 campaign, and his split from the Republican Party to start a third party because of the corruption that was taking place at that time. It's very similar to what's going on today. So how do we move beyond this corrupt system? Well, on my website, I'm going to be posting a list of all independent and third-party candidates running around the country. And I'm going to do the best I can through sources such as League of Women Voters and other reliable, nonpartisan sources to provide information to those that are interested on these candidates so that they can make good, rational decisions on which candidates that are third-party or independent candidates they'd like to support. And I'm also going to be doing a lot of work and a lot of research here in this election cycle to make recommendations based on the research that I'm able to garner. But again, each of us has to make our own choices, our own decisions, but we should try, as independents and third-party voters, we should try to coalesce around certain candidates that we think would serve the best interest of those in our communities so that we can break the hold that the Democrats and Republicans have on power. It's only by doing such an insurgency campaign that we can get independents and third parties into office, then they can start creating laws to reform the political process and to reform the other things in government that need to be corrected in order to get this country back on the proper course and to make sure that the glorious cause of America, which is our liberty and our freedom, is preserved for future generations. We need to move beyond partisanship, and we need to move to a point where we can have rational, honest, intelligent debate and discussion and come to a consensus to do what's in the best interest of all Americans, regardless of party affiliation or non-affiliation. This isn't about the Revolutionary War and all the wars that have been fought since, and I know this is a 9-year Navy veteran. These wars and these lives haven't been lost to support one party or the other. These wars and these lives have been lost to continue and support the glorious cause of America, which is liberty and freedom and justice for all. So please, please visit my website and you will see a list, as I said, of independent and third-party candidates that we can vote for together as independents and third parties, which now we make up. We need to coalesce because we make up the majority of the voting population in this country. And my hope is that the moderate Republicans and the moderate Democrats that put country first will join us and make good choices. And again, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't vote for Democrats or Republicans. If they are the best choice in your area, then by all means, if you feel good about these people and you think that they will put their country ahead of their party, then I encourage you to vote for them if they're good and honorable people. So let's not vote for people just based on party affiliation. Let's vote for the best and the brightest among us, the people that truly have America's interest at the core of their heart, and they truly want, and they're well educated and they're knowledgeable people that are rational and reasonable, and they're going to work together with other people regardless of any party affiliations to do what's in the best interest of our country. This is what we need. We need to do this now. Otherwise, all will be lost. If America cannot come together, if we cannot elect good, intelligent, rational people that put the country ahead of any party affiliation, then America will be in serious, serious trouble. And some people are now predicting that we're going to have a depression worse than the Great Depression. And I hope and pray, as I'm sure many of you do, that they're wrong. But in order to avoid that from happening, we need rational, good people in office that are willing to put the country ahead of any party affiliation. So, please visit my website and look for this list. And also, I encourage you to look at some rational, centrist third parties, such as one that I've affiliated myself with through the research I did on my book, called the Modern Whig Party, and they can be found at modernwhig.org. However, the Modern Whig Party, in my honest assessment, I look at that as if you decide to either affiliate with them or any other, what I would call reasonable third-party movement, the parties can be a positive force if they're not corrupt. And the parties, and this is what they originally were intended to do, and unfortunately two major parties have lost their way, but they're meant to be a platform where people can come together and organize themselves to move policies forward that are for the good of the whole nation and not just for themselves, people of like mind. And so I've chosen to affiliate with the Whig Party, but I'm open. I'm still consider myself, even though I'm affiliated with the Whig Party, to be independently minded. And I'm not, and I think the Whig Party firmly supports this, I know they do, in the fact that even those that call themselves Whigs, and you can go look at this yourself, we put country first, above party politics or affiliation. And the Whig Party is really just a vehicle for people to come together to discuss issues, come to rational conclusions, and then to support candidates. And actually, in the philosophy of this and other parties, hopefully, the idea is that regardless of what a person calls themselves, if they're good Americans and they're honorable and they're going to do what's best for the country, that we'll give them our support. So in that vein, again, I will be posting a list of candidates on the website. We really do have to break the hold that the two major parties have on power. We need to get rational people in office that are not beholden to any political party or political interest, that are willing to put forth the pressure on the other two parties to work with them to make positive changes in America and put America first again. So thank you for your time, and I look forward to communicating with you in the future, both here and on my website.